You bumped into someone in the hallway and said sorry. They sent you a short text and you apologized for misreading it. Someone else was having a bad day, and somehow you found a way to feel responsible for that too. If that sounds familiar, I need you to hear this. You are not too sensitive, you are not weak, and this has nothing to do with being polite. There is something much deeper happening, something that was wired into you long before you even understood what an apology was. And by the end of this video, you will finally understand why you do it and what it is quietly costing you. In psychology, chronic over-apologizing is rarely about manners. It is almost always a survival strategy, one that developed in an environment where keeping the peace felt more urgent than telling the truth. When you grew up in a home where someone's mood was unpredictable, or where conflict was dangerous, or where love felt conditional on your behavior, your nervous system learned something powerful. Apologizing quickly makes the threat go away. It de-escalates. It resets the room. It keeps you safe. And here's the thing. It worked. Which is exactly why you still do it as an adult, even when there is nothing threatening in the room at all. Your nervous system does not know the difference between your childhood kitchen and a conversation with a coworker. It only knows the pattern. Apology equals safety. So it reaches for it automatically before your conscious mind has even had a chance to assess whether you actually did anything wrong. This is what therapists call a fawn response. It is one of 4 stress responses, alongside fight, flight, and freeze, and it is by far the least talked about. The fawn response looks like immediately trying to please, appease, or smooth things over when you sense any tension at all. It looks like shrinking. It looks like saying sorry before you even finish the sentence you were trying to say, and it feels, from the inside, like kindness, like consideration, like being a good person. But underneath it, if you are honest, there is almost always fear. Not fear of a physical threat, fear of disapproval, fear of someone being upset with you, fear of being seen as difficult, demanding, or too much. And for many Christians, this fear gets a theological layer placed on top of it. You were taught that humility is a virtue, that putting others first is Christ-like, that saying sorry quickly resolves conflict and reflects a gentle spirit. All of that is true in its proper context. But somewhere along the way, for some of us, those beautiful truths got tangled up with something else. They became a cover story for something that was never about faith at all. They became a spiritual sounding reason to keep doing what fear had already trained us to do. Proverbs 29:25 says, "Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe." Notice what that verse calls it, a snare. Not a personality trait, not a sensitivity, a trap. And traps, by definition, are things you do not realize you are in until you try to move and cannot. The chronic apologizer rarely sees themselves as living in fear. They see themselves as humble, as easygoing, as someone who just does not like conflict. But if the thought of someone being mildly disappointed in you produces a full-body anxiety response, that is not humility. That is a snare. So how did it form? For most people, it starts with one of 3 environments. The first is a home where a parent's emotional state was unpredictable, where you never quite knew which version of them you were going to get, so you learned to scan the room constantly and adjust yourself accordingly. The second is a home where conflict was explosive, where any disagreement felt like it could shatter something. So you learn to preemptively apologize just to prevent the detonation. And the third, and this one is subtle, is a home where love was expressed through approval, where you were praised when you were easy and withdrawn from when you were difficult, where being good meant being agreeable, and where the fastest way back into connection was to apologize, even if you did not fully understand what for. Here is what chronic over-apologizing costs you, and why it matters that you start to see this clearly. Every unnecessary apology is a small lie. It communicates to the other person that you were in the wrong when you were not. It warps the relational reality between you. Over time, the people around you stop seeing who you actually are. They see a curated, softened version of you that has been pre-adjusted to avoid causing discomfort, and you begin to lose track of where you end and their comfort begins. There is also a deeper cost that almost nobody talks about: resentment. When you apologize for things that are not your fault, you swallow something. You agree, out loud, to a version of events that is not true, and even if you do not consciously register it, your nervous system does. That swallowed disagreement does not disappear. It accumulates, and it tends to resurface as a low-grade resentment toward the very people you were trying to protect by apologizing. This is one of the most disorienting patterns in relational life, feeling quietly angry at people you have been nothing but accommodating toward and not understanding why. Jesus said in Matthew 5:37, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." It is one of the simplest commands in all of Scripture and one of the most countercultural for chronic apologizers. Because what he is describing is not just honesty, it is identity. A person whose yes means yes and whose no means no is a person who knows who they are. They are not constantly renegotiating their position based on the emotional temperature of the room. They are not performing humility while quietly abandoning themselves. They are present, grounded, and real. That is what healing looks like in this area. Not becoming someone who never apologizes, but becoming someone who apologizes when it is true and does not when it is not. It sounds simple, but for someone whose nervous system has been wired to reach for sorry as a reflex, it takes real practice, and it often requires grieving something, the realization that much of what you called humility was actually fear, that much of what you called consideration for others was actually self-protection wearing a generous mask. So here's where to start. The next time you feel the impulse to apologize, pause just for 2 seconds and ask yourself one question. Did I actually do something wrong here? Not did I make someone uncomfortable? Not did someone seem upset? Did I do something that genuinely caused harm or crossed a line? If the answer is yes, apologize fully and mean it. If the answer is no, try something different. Try saying, "I hear that this is hard," or "I can see you are frustrated," without making their emotional state your fault. You can be compassionate without being culpable. You can be present without disappearing. This is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming more honest, more real, more you. Because the world does not need another version of you that has been smoothed down and apologized into shapelessness. It needs the actual you, clear, grounded, and free from the snare that has been holding you for far too long. If this spoke to something in you, subscribe to this channel. Every week I create content at the intersection of psychology and Christian faith, and I would love to keep walking this road with you. You are not alone in this. I left something in the description. It's a simple 7-day path to help you see this more clearly. Just take a look when you feel ready.